A reading from the book of Acts. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came upon everyone because many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much more time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the good will of all the people. And day by day the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. At this time, I'd like to invite Phoebe Trepp forward. She will be our guest presenter this morning. So welcome, Phoebe.
Hello, thank you so much for having me to join you this morning. I think it was a year ago, I was intending to come and then I woke up and had no voice at all, so this is so much better. I'm here to tell you a little bit about Willis Dady, what we do, and then also I'm going to share a video of one of our clients and the experience that she had becoming homeless and then getting out of homelessness. I'll also be around after the service. If you have other questions, I'd love to talk more. I usually go too long, so I'm going to try to keep an eye on that. So Willis Dady has been around 31 years, and often people think of us as a shelter, and if you've heard of us, you know that we have a shelter for men. That's how we started. But we also really believe that we have the ability to break the cycle of homelessness and not just be a safe place for today, but to really help equip people to get back into housing and to stay in housing and to really bring supports into their lives that will help them stay housed for the long run. So we're really looking at being a safe place in crisis and then moving beyond that to be able to break that cycle of homelessness. I love to tell a little bit about our story because our name is a little unique. We're easy to find. We're the only Willis Dady out there. So 31 years ago, our founder, Jim Wellborn, had experienced homelessness himself for 25 years. He was a veteran. He traveled around the country. He was from Iowa. He ended up in Cedar Rapids and he struggled with alcoholism for many years. At that time, he decided, he wanted to change his lifestyle. He got help, he got a job, he got an apartment. He ended up going to Mount Mercy after Kirkwood and became a social work major. In his senior year, he was a non-traditional student, and all the senior social work majors had to do a giving back project. So he decided to open a day shelter where men could come and receive the respect and the encouragement that he felt they needed to become to not be homeless and to give up the other addictions in their life. So that quickly became an overnight shelter because the need was so great that they turned it into overnights. At that time, Willis Dady was a young man in Des Moines who was experiencing homelessness when he saw a boy fall in the river. Willis Dady jumped in to try to save the boy's life. They both ended up passing away. We're named after Willis Dady. I think it's a great testament to the fact that people are not defined by their homelessness. It's just one part of what's going on in their life, and really there's so much more beyond what you can see on the surface. So for many years we were a shelter. That's what we did, and then we added family shelter. So we now house families and single men, families of any kind. We sometimes have grandparents. We have lots of different family makeups. And then about 10 years ago, we added case management. And that was really a shift from just providing that safe place to really thinking about how do we break this cycle? How do we do a better job of making sure people don't have to come back to us? So that I call that kind of our essential service. And then around 6 years ago, we wanted to think even broader. We have so many people coming in every year. How do we get out in front of the problem and prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place? So we started our prevention program, and it's just been an astounding program for people who've been evicted or cannot pay their rent, and they call and say, I know I'm going to be homeless in 2 weeks, can you save a spot? And instead of just waiting for that to happen, we try to intervene. So that's our prevention program. And then we recently have added a rapid rehousing program, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So we've grown quite a bit in scope over the years. If you saw anything, if you're driving down 4th Avenue where we're located in Cedar Rapids, you'll see construction, which is such a relief. We have, for this whole 30-year period, wanted to do some renovations to our building. Finally, that's being done, and we are so happy to see the concrete being poured and the walls going up. I wanted to talk a little bit about coordination because often people ask, do you work with the other shelters? And we do, a lot, actually. So I've listed the number on here because this is a one-stop shop is what we call it. It's kind of like 211, but for people needing housing. So if they call this number or walk into Waypoint, they get what's called triaged. So people ask them questions about where did they stay last night? If you didn't get into shelter, where would you stay tonight? It's a process to try to divert people who don't actually need shelter but may be able to stay with friends and family versus to identify those who are really most vulnerable and are sleeping outside. So through that, they do a quick assessment. If it's someone needing prevention, they would be sent to our prevention program. If it's a veteran, they're sent to the veteran program. So it's kind of a way to get them to the right door right away instead of calling 6 different places in the community. Once they're placed with us, they come right over and they do an intake into our shelter beds. So as soon as a bed opens up, they have access to it and they can put someone right in that bed or family unit as soon as it's open. Let's see if I got this right. Okay. So I talked a little bit about, our shelter is pictured there. Our case manager that's Martha. She's been with us for, I think, 8 years now. So we're very fortunate to have very dedicated staff, which is kind of where all the work gets done. You probably know that too. Our street outreach program is one that we added this year. The idea for that is that we have many people in the community who, for different reasons, are not coming into shelter. Some of them don't want to come into shelter because of all the rules and all of the people that they have to share a bathroom with and a room with. It's very, very crowded. But others may not be able to come in because of past behaviors, usually related to mental illness and substance use. In those cases, we have people sleeping outside, and our street outreach program is just a few hours a week. But we're going out to anyone that we can flag as being homeless, and we're talking with them, bringing them water, bringing them granola bars, beef jerky, that kind of stuff. Sometimes bringing tents and sleeping bags or blankets if they have none, and really trying to engage in a relationship with them. Try to figure out, is it that you don't want to come into shelter or that you just didn't realize there were resources, and then continue to work with them until we can get them into housing. So our street outreach program has been really helpful and a very different approach. Our shelter is much more accountability based. No one coming into shelter can be using drugs or alcohol just because we have 30 days to help you get housed and we need you to be focused on housing and employment, whereas our street outreach program is much broader and really relationship based. And our intent with these programs is really to find everyone across the spectrum that really needs our help and not to be turning people away just because they don't fit the model of shelter or the model of case management, but to be able to reach everyone who's at risk of dying out on the streets. I kind of talked about this a little, but this is what our shelter looks like. We have currently space for 16 men and 4 families. In a year, I hope so, in a year, we'll have space for 20 men and 8 families. It'll be quite a bit, it'll be renovated, and also for the first time, will be handicap accessible. Currently, in this area, the whole county, there's no shelter for men in wheelchairs. We have to turn them away just because we've never had an elevator and you can't get into the bathrooms and all kinds of things. So we're really incredibly excited about this upgrade. We have a kitchen. Often the men will cook for each other. That's the men's kitchen pictured there. They are out during the day at our shelter, so between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. all the men are out. Families are out between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Once they get back Usually there's a lot of shared meals. We also solicit volunteers like you guys to bring meals on Sundays. On the other days, there's often meal sites that people can visit, but on Sundays, they're harder, there's not as many. So we're very fortunate to have volunteers bringing in food on Sundays for our clients. So here's just a few numbers. Those are also in your bulletin, but really just talks about how many people we see each year, and these numbers have stayed pretty consistent. Our prevention program, as I mentioned, is somewhat new, but in the last 2 years, we've served over 700 people each year in that program. Often it involves talking with them about their budget, their finances, helping them create a payment plan if they have never talked to their landlord about having problems with the payment, and sometimes helping them identify other housing that they can afford so that they can go there before they would end up at a shelter. And in that population, only 2% have ended up coming into shelters, so we feel pretty good about that. Pictured down in the corner is a picture of our overflow shelter. Oh, it's coming up to that time again. So each winter for the last 3, and this will be our 4th, we've led the community-wide winter overflow program, and we have used space that's just been donated each year, and it's moved around every year. And we have staffed it, trained our staff, and provided a place where anybody can come in. It can be men, families, women. They can come in for the night, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. They get a cot, blankets, a little bit of coffee in the morning, and that is it. It's really a safe place so that people don't freeze to death outside. And also we know many people in the winter can suffer from frostbite or even burns because they're trying to stay warm outside and something catches on fire. So we see this as a real safety issue, and we don't have a place yet this year, so we're looking for a big place that we can have cots set up for the December to March timeframe. Last year we served over 400 unique individuals at that overflow shelter in the winter. So I mentioned our new building. This is going up right now as we speak. Well, maybe not today, but yesterday they were working on it. The gray part is our existing, and then the yellow part will all be new. So we're over doubling our square footage. If you are interested, I would encourage you to reach out to me, and you can do a tour beforehand and then a tour after, because we should be opening by next summer of 2019. Oops, I think I went too fast there. Oh. Something's happening. So I think I'll talk about a couple of the programs that we are starting this year, just to let you know again how you impact us with your gifts. We have we're starting what's called permanent supportive housing. I wonder, can we go back one there? There we go. Permanent supportive housing. These are all clients of ours that agreed to get their pictures taken, but starts this year actually in a couple of weeks. And the idea behind this, well, let me step back and say that over 80% of our clients are homeless for the first time. So they're coming to us because of a bad situation. They didn't have support where they could go somewhere safe. They didn't have income to stay in a hotel while they got things figured out. So 80%, almost everybody coming in, is homeless for only one time. Then there's that other 20%. That is repeatedly homeless, and those are usually who people think of when they think of someone who's homeless. In that case, we realize we need to do more to keep them out of homelessness. So permanent supportive housing is known nationally as a model that works for that population, and we are piloting it by supporting 5 units, 5 apartments that will be designated for people leaving homelessness, and they will not pay more than 30% of their income on their rent, which is really hard to come by. And then we will have on-site support. So we'll have a case manager there checking in with them every week. They're probably about 10 hours a week total. And the idea, what you've seen from this, is that you have occupancy for 97% of your clients for at least 5 years. So it's just really increases the stability for people in housing and provides them the chance to heal and then start recovering, whatever that recovery looks like. So we're pretty excited about that. We also started rapid rehousing, but I'll move on. So we utilize volunteers so much in our shelter. We're so fortunate. And so there's all kinds of things that we can use your help with, especially just coming around and understanding what we do. You know, one of the biggest things that we can use your help with is advocating for affordable housing and for having places in every community where people with low income can live safely and have the option of housing. But beyond that, we utilize a lot of volunteers every day at our desk as receptionists, people to help clean the donation room, and we actually staff our shelter overnight with volunteers. So we train you up, and then at 10:30 our staff leaves and you sleep or play on the internet or whatever, and then at 6 in the morning our staff returns. So we're just so fortunate to have a base of volunteers to help out. And of course we take donation items as well, especially getting into the winter. We'll take a lot of coats and warm clothes. We can always take socks and underwear pretty much universally. So next I want to share a video with you.
The hardest thing I've ever had to do was to call a homeless shelter and admit that I needed that kind of help. You don't grow up thinking you're going to be homeless. You don't ever think that's going to happen to you. But when it does, it's so hard. People would like look at me and, oh, she would never be homeless. She doesn't look like some. She's got a decent job, she, you know. And then I tell people my story and they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, it can happen to anybody. I was in a very abusive relationship and I needed to get out of it because it was the abuse was starting to go to my son, and I knew I had to get out, so it was another tough choice, you know, to make, but I felt like, you know, I was out of control in that situation. You know, to try to find a place on your own is hard. That's just one piece of experiencing homelessness, and I think people just think, oh, well, let's just give them a roof over their head. But there are situations that have brought you to that, regardless of what it is, drugs, abuse, you know, the emotional connection, the resources, plugging them in. They know somebody who knows somebody, or he would meet with me once a week and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Or, what's going on with the kids, and yada, yada. So now I have a passion in life. I didn't have that before. I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing. Now I have a passion for Willis Dady specifically, but homelessness as a whole. My daughter is in Europe right now. She is 16, and she was 4 when we went into the shelter. She got selected through her school as a gifted art student to go on this trip over to Europe. She, for some reason, ever since she's been a little girl, she's had this affinity towards Paris. Of all of the feelings that a mother should feel, you know, worried, they're traveling across, you know, something's going to happen, or, you know, none of that. I was thankful that I just reflected back on my life, and I'm like, 12 years ago, we were in a shelter. With just a couple dollars in my pocket. And now I get to send my kid off to Paris. She would have never had that opportunity. I mean, I'm just very grateful. They were a stepping stone. You get more than you give. And there's no dollar amount that you could ever put on that. It's an internal thing. I am a mother. I am resilient. I am a protector. I am passionate about serving in my community. Homelessness does not define me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much again for being, I guess, allowing me to come and share what we do, but also I want to emphasize I really consider us as partners in service. We absolutely could not do our work without the support of our community, and I'm just grateful every day that I have the resources to be able to continue to provide shelter and services for people in need. So thank you so much, and again, I'll be around if you have questions later.